We have 30 until 40 minutes for each invited speaker. And the second part for question and answer, we have 15 until 20 minutes for participants in the last session or in the last discussion part. For reminder for the participants, I noticed that before we start, please, for the participants, turn off your audio during the presentation. So, for the first, I would like to invite speaker, Professor Dr. Onder Kutlu, to give lecture today. For Professor Onder Kutlu, is time's yours.
Okay, thank you very much for inviting me for your organization, International Symposium on Engineering and Technology in Disaster Management. Before starting, I would like to say Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
It's always pleasure with friends from Indonesia. I have had very good relations with some of the colleagues, some of the universities in different parts of Indonesia in the last 5 or 6 years. Therefore, when I was invited to deliver a conference, a paper in this rather interesting and rather pleasure-giving activity, scientific activity, academic activity, I immediately accepted the invitation. Therefore, I should say that it is my pleasure to be with you today with the colleagues from different parts, maybe different parts of Indonesia and maybe from different parts of the world. My presentation,
recording in progress.
My paper is about. Is it possible to allow me to share my screen because I have a PowerPoint presentation?
You can share your presentation, sir, your slide. You are co-host now, bro.
Okay. Okay now.
Okay.
Okay. As I said, my topic is about redefining sustainable urbanization during the COVID-19 crisis. I thought that this topic might suit with the general topic of the symposium. Therefore, I hope that the information I will provide might strike your attention, might start new discussions, at least among the participants of this conference. My presentation consists of 3 main aspects, 3 main points. First, I'm going to talk a little bit about some definitions, some points which covers public administration, public policy, and in practice. Secondly, I'm going to talk about sustainable urbanization, especially during this COVID-19 crisis, this pandemic. And finally, I'm going to concentrate on this crisis and the new era what are the effects and processes to be followed, to be examined during this global pandemic. First of all, at the moment, the current conditions are subject to change at the central, regional, and local government levels. This interferes, this involves movement of activities and also the activities of the human beings operating in the scene. Therefore, we need to concentrate on the changing attitudes of the actors, because as the students and the scholars of the public policy and public administration, we should not only concentrate on eradicating and fighting against this pandemic, but also try to take some lessons, try to learn from the experience occurring or available in the practical side. Because for my personally, I am professor of public policy and public administration, but I have so many involvements in local governments, central governments, as well as civil society and NGO activities, because usually, this is the story everywhere, but usually, at least in my country, professors and academics, they quite often tend to concentrate on theoretical aspects and leaving aside the practical issues. For personally, I'm a practical person. I define myself as a practical person. Therefore, we should learn from the conditions and we should learn from the events taking place on the ground. This is the first thing I should say. Secondly, in terms of the historical period, public administration and public policy is or has been experiencing, there are some cornerstone activities and there are some very, very important periods. Especially during the 1970s, for example, the crisis in financial terms led to crisis in political, administrative, and economic activities. Therefore, from 1980s, there has been a kind of transformation period for public policy actors. There has been a new movement in public administration. This is a quite well-known story. I'm not going to talk about it. Secondly, during the, in the new millennium, starting from 2000s, we have experienced also a new approach to public administration. Involvement of NGOs, involvement of especially certain local and regional actors in central activities, central government policies, and central government issues. But now, at the moment, I have started to write certain articles and an ebook about this paradigm shift in public policy. Because as I'm going to explain in detail, there has been a kind of a paradigm shift in public policy, especially imposed by these crisis conditions, COVID-19 conditions. I'm saying COVID-19, but at the moment, in many countries, including Turkey, it has been started to be called as COVID-20 or COVID-21 because new variants in the virus, I mean, firstly started from Britain, United Kingdom, now Brazil and South Africa. This variant spreading quite, I mean, dramatically, quite fast, and therefore we are going to talk much, I think, in the future about the period, about the change of this virus. Therefore, the change in public administration and public policy actors interferes with scale and scope of the activities, but one very important element. That is, the change contains asymmetrical aspects, which has never been taught before. Therefore, we should, as academics, as the scholars of the field, we should concentrate on these new asymmetrical aspects, which are quite different from the experience from the previous ones. So, start of questioning, people have started to question the existing pace of the activities all around the world. As we all follow from the news, there are some movements in European countries. There are some riots, for example, in the United States for the new conditions, I can say. So this is quite important because in Germany, for example, or in Netherlands, in Holland, in Belgium, or in London, I have been following the news, but there are so many riots and some kind of confusion, some kind of new demands from the society. Therefore, I mean, people are quite puzzled with the new conditions. So, as the scholars, we should concentrate on these points as well. And another point is the consensus on the basic principles, processes of public policy methodology has been broken. So, I mean, starting from the 1980s, though, as I mentioned, it has been changed with certain aspects during the 2000s. I mean, this consensus on providing basic public policies, basic public goods and services have been broken. So this will have quite important effects on public policy circles and areas, I should say. So again, the consensus during the 1980s or 1970s, starting from 1970s, to give more power to private sector or to vitalize, at least with a liberal or neoliberal agenda, has also been questioned at the moment. Because, I mean, state and the public administration were the main and capable actors during 1980s, 90s, etc. But now, I mean, state and public administrations are the main actors, despite the previous era, because the governments, although, I mean, I should mention that some international organizations such as OECD or International Monetary Fund, IMF, or the World Bank, which all these organizations, including European Union, they started to promote, they wanted to promote private sector and private activities. But at the moment, as we all experience, government, state, and public administration, and these actors, they are more active now. They are actively involving to provide public goods and services for their respective societies. This is a quite important development, I should say. So civil society and NGOs, some civil organizations, they have been supporting the state level activities as well as central and local administrative authorities and unions. This is quite important as well, because there are some foundations, there are some organizations which are formed for good causes, social causes for the respective societies. These organizations are quite active at the moment, and they have collaboration and cooperation with official actors. This is quite important as well. So these activities, they involved, for example, disaster mitigation. This involves, overcoming the crisis created or available in the arena. Therefore, civil society are the new and very famous figures of the new era, I should say. So even in these conditions, even the civil arena, civil sphere is dominated through government activities in terms of social support activities and the groups. So civil arena also is subject to change in this new era. So we can concentrate, or we should concentrate in this issue as well. Moving on to the sustainable urbanization, I'm not going to give about theoretical aspects. I'm going to concentrate on, as I mentioned, on practical issues. As we all aware, there are 3 points in sustainable urbanization: environment, development, namely economy and social dimension. 2 of the 3 elements have been changed, have been affected during this era: economy and social aspect. Economy, in many parts of the world, including Turkey, so many, especially small and medium enterprises, they have been affected by this crisis. Especially small initiatives, small companies, or small scale economic activities, they have been affected much. The larger companies, at least in my country, they are doing quite well at the moment. Therefore, economy and social aspect, they need to be concentrated during this era. Environment, because of some curfews, because of some restrictions and lockdowns, environment is doing quite well at the moment, because if you don't get out, if you don't use your cars, etc., you cannot pollute the environment. This is the issue. But pollution, if you if you take environment in terms of physical structure, this is the right. But in terms of, for example, disasters, unfortunately, Indonesia is one of the some countries to face these disasters. Recently, again, some earthquakes and flood and other activities. Unfortunately, our praise and our dua are with our brothers and sisters in Indonesia. I have been following the news in Indonesia, but this is a different issue at the moment, at least for my for the scale of my presentation. So during this, this sustainable urbanization, by definition, local governments are the main units to deal with this economic environment and social dimensions. But because local units being located near the public, near the consumer, near the civil dwellers, civil population of their respective areas, they are better equipped with strengths. They are better equipped with their activities and with their resources, I should say. So during this era, increase of technology-bound services leads more financial resources, especially during this pandemic period, especially during, in general terms, during crisis and disasters, for example. So this brings some burden, some kind of financial requirements of financial resources to deal with the new demands and new conditions. Okay. So there is no definite explanation to predict the movement of the conditions, because we all following now, we are in some sense subjects of the change, but in some sense, in some other senses, we are the objects of the changes. So, we have been trying to get involved in the activities in order to take control of the issues and propositions. So central government aid in terms of technology and finance are likely to shape public administration, administrative and policy circles during this era, because local authorities or autonomous organizations, they need the financial, at least financial and technical support of their government. This is quite important. So the requirement of more financial resources might drive local and regional actors to strive to find new financial conditions, new financial activities in their respective areas. This is quite important pressure directly affecting the conditions and the propositions of local and regional organizations. So sustainable organization is under threat at the moment because economy and social aspects are quite affected by the new era. So moving on to the crisis management and the new era, as we all know, crises do not only bring some threats, they might also bring some kind of opportunities. As I am sitting now in my home from thousands and thousands of kilometers away in Turkey, it's 8 o'clock now, 8:30. So I have been fortunate to connect with my friends and colleagues from Indonesia and from other parts of the world. So, this is a part of the crisis, because previously I have visited Indonesia maybe 8 times, attending conferences, delivering some kind of keynote speeches in Makassar, in Kendari, Yogyakarta, Parepare, etc. So this is a kind of opportunity. This is a kind of facilitation for myself as academic. But in the area, in practice, the crisis might spot some of the problems. Otherwise, they cannot be defined during normal time. So, crisis, I always take great care of attention to learn during the crisis. This is quite valuable lesson. So this is the issue in many countries. As myself, for example, I had my PhD from Britain, from the University of Exeter. We had a center concentrated on crisis and the learning from the experience of the people and organizations facing crisis in Exeter. I have been involved in their activities, academic activities during my studies and also after my studies, because crisis and disaster issues, as I said, crisis do not only have the effects of disaster issues, namely threats, but also opportunities and bringing some kind of new and fresh points for the public policy circles. So, for example, crisis usually paves the way for a new and fresh start for public policy activities. Otherwise, public administration and public policy, they tend to repeat itself. Institutionalization, for example, requires path dependency. As we all know this theoretical aspect, path dependency. You always follow the blueprint, you always follow the activities and repeat the activities. So in order to provide a kind of consistency, continuity, as well as small scale changes, because changes are the main parts of the life. We cannot deny. So the concept and processes related to sustainability have been faced quite fierce attack from different segments of the society. Therefore, actors have also been altered during the crisis period. Because as I mentioned, local authorities, regional authorities, they tend to lose ground for the benefit of the central organizations. So small scale organizations with quite defined tasks and quite defined vision and mission, they have better opportunities, they have better conditions for having success in their activities. So, especially during this crisis, we all saw and we have seen that in some basic public policy areas, such as health, education, and the provision of basic needs and necessities, are the main target of the government at the moment. So, starting from as the Maslow hierarchy defines, we start from the bottom of the hierarchy in order to provide, basic necessities, basic food, for example. I mean, health, for example. So health and education, they are a part of basic necessity definition in many circles. So, states are taking quite crucial decisions to give up certain previous certain roles and functions in order to better concentrate on new and very, very basic issues. So in order to start, they have to give up some of their responsibilities. So in these areas, the areas which have been given up by state actors need to be filled by maybe private sector, maybe some third sector, non-governmental organizations. These areas, now this question is open for discussion at the moment. So therefore societies and their respective central governments, they are to question in very, very basic issues. So, I mean, in the life cycle of the societies and the world, human beings, this is a kind of near cornerstone in order to define relations, in order to define actors, in order to define, redefine resources in this area. For example, in social aspects, which is one of the three main points of sustainable urbanization, face new threats. For example, distance education. We all had to cope with this, with the needs of the education. Therefore, distance education has some pros and cons, has some advantages and some advantages. We have all been experiencing this issue. Secondly, social attitudes and social distance. And for example, we are the societies which have quite close relations with their ancestors, with their friends and families. So we cannot distance our distance, and we cannot put some kind of barriers with our relatives and friends. So this is a quite important and challenging issue, challenging task for the human beings to put some kind of distance against their respective friends, against their families. Therefore, these are kind of challenges especially Islamic societies are facing at the moment. So the breaking of the balance between economic and social parameters is undividable. It's also important. Secondly, this new form is not directed by the actors. There are some kind of, some misty, some kind of flow points and areas which need to be discussed and filled in the near future. So this environment, this cloudy environment, is likely to evolve to a new atmosphere. So because there are some very, very basic points. For example, the definition, the new normal, quote unquote, is something unimaginable. So whether people, we tend to think that there is no such thing as new normal. Normal is normal and extraordinary is extraordinary. But according to, for example, World Health Organization, WHO, they define the new normal as the basic and the future definition of the activities and relations among societies and different groups. So another point is, the financial burden, financial load brought by sustainable urbanization approach places a great pressure on central governments. So there is a kind of, you have to strike a balance between sustainable urbanization environment and financial activity. So, and different countries which have different scale and scope of resources, they have to find their own ways in national level. Therefore, you cannot clarify, you cannot define a broader definition for the different parts of the world. So, this cannot be undertaken by local authorities because of scarce resources, but central governments or regional governments, they have to support and they have to stand by the local authorities. So sustainable city and sustainable urbanization, they tend to lean on sustainable society. So the discussion which was provided by our German friends, Germany, Industry 4.0 leads towards new elements. And as I have seen on an article recently, they started to discuss 5.0, quite a new era with this pandemic. So, the societies and the nations and the governments which have not been able to cope with the findings and the definitions brought by Industry 4.0, they have to face quite a new and alarming era with the new Industry 5.0. We have not been able to achieve Industry 4.0. So 5.0 is something unimaginable. So we have to spare some time to study these issues as well for our respective societies. So, concluding remarks. As I mentioned, the world is seen to be facing an unprecedented scale and scope of changes from the circles previously never thought to occur. This is quite important. Secondly, local governments, local authorities, as well as regional ones, are under great pressure to meet the local needs and to balance their financial positions because of the financial burden, because of the financial propositions brought by the new activities and new positions. It's likely that local authorities in many countries, they would fail in their attempts to bring a kind of successful response for these activities. They will have very challenging positions in the quite near future. Elements of sustainable urbanization, for example, development, economy, and social aspects are all surrounded by these severe conditions. So, people and human beings, they have to concentrate on these issues as well. Central government activities dominate the local and the regional. So there are a kind of, as I mentioned, paradigm shift in public policy and in public administration. Therefore, governments, they have to face these difficulties as well. So in this equilibrium, in this definition, the local means regional as well, is too weak to respond to these demands and the pressure coming from different parts. So the transition period, at least during the last era, hints a kind of certain provisions as to central local relations during crisis times. So the relations have to be redefined as well between these organizations and different layers and levels of governments. Local actors would depend very much on the information and direction from at least for the foreseeable future. The tendency to localize the public services are questions, despite the last 40 or 50 years, because during that time, starting from European Commission, for example, they provided some kind of charter, some kind of provisions, and European Union, as well as United Nations, global and regional international organizations, they started to provide some kind of provisions. But all these knowledge are questionable at the moment. And international organizations do support this argument. So the pandemic shows that the fallacy of local and regional provisions and strengths are fading away. This is also an important definition and clarification. Global intervention seems to be limited as local governments are in the struggle to find ways of providing their very, very, very basic necessities, and independent institutions and civil society are to observe the provision of the new era. And finally, academics, as an academic myself, academics might concentrate on evaluating these period and the issues occurring in the public arena. So there are quite an important, this is a kind of gold mine. The more you dig, the better the much information you obtain from the activities. And thank you very much. My presentation is over now. In the second part, I try to answer if you have any kind of questions for me to answer. Thank you very much again.
Okay, thank you very much, Professor Honder. Yeah, I have many notices from your presentation today. For example, you say about a starting point from redefining sustainability urbanization during COVID-19. It's very important, we know today. And also sustainable urbanization element. It's also important you share to us. And I have remarked that environment, development, and social are affect elements in COVID-19, especially economy and social aspect are surrounded by several conditions. It's my remarks. And then the last, you say also that society and their respective control governments start to question in very basic issue. And the last, the new normal is something unimaginable. And I have one question for you, Professor Onder. Maybe you can answer my question. It's about crisis management and new era. You say that not every crisis is necessary. Negative At the same time, opportunity and threat at similar. Maybe you can explain to us what is the opportunity and the threat for not every crisis is necessarily negative. But we know in this condition, almost every crisis we say negative aspect. Professor Under, could you hear my voice? Hello, Professor Under.
Hello. I think if I mean, I had difficulty in having your voice, but if I correct if I understood correctly your question, you are asking about the opportunity side of the crisis.
Yes.
So, okay. I mean, in Chinese language, the crisis consists of two words. If you write threat and opportunities together, it is crisis in Chinese language.
Okay.
So I am
Chinese.
a true believer of this argument that there are some threats for the functioning, for the activities, for the for the existence of societies and organizations, especially from during crisis. But I mean, opportunities. For example, you know, because of this COVID-19 pandemic, at the moment I am sitting in my home, and you are sitting in many, I mean, participants, they are sitting in their offices, in their cities, in their homes, and they have been able to follow, they have been able to attend this quite important symposium. So, for public policy and for public administration policy makers, crisis times, you know, they, if the policy makers, if the decision makers, they have the intention to learn from crisis, because crisis is not cause, it's an effect, it's an outcome. It means that something went wrong, and that's why, because of the mistakes, because of some missed elements, you face crisis. So, I mean, it's a kind of relations, cause and effect relations. So, crisis is an outcome. For example, if I have headache, if I have some, for example, headache in my, I mean, it means that something is going wrong.
Yeah.
I haven't had enough water, for example, or I haven't had enough, you know, rest, maybe. But therefore, I mean, policymakers, this is quite important. Sometimes they create, they start crisis, but controlled crisis. Because during crisis times, for example, resistance to new, resistance to, for example, to reform, new definitions, you know, they are over. For example, I mean, they call lockdown and they stay at home. Otherwise, you cannot stop people from going out. So it means that this is a kind of, there's a kind of room for the policymakers to learn and also to plan the future of their respective societies. So during crisis, as I mentioned, one of the problems or one of the issues of policy reform, for example, example, is the resistance from involved actors. So during crisis, there's no resistance. So you can spot what are the causes, what are the effects of, crisis. So it's an outcome, as I mentioned. Therefore, policymakers, as well as academics, by myself and by our colleagues now attending the conference, we should concentrate on to learn, especially young academics, junior academics. They should concentrate on how to learn from negative examples, because I haven't had time, or I should have mentioned about a little bit about my studies. My main research area is policy learning and policy transfer. So you can transfer everything. You cannot. You can also make negative transfer. You can learn from the bad and negative experience of other societies and other organizations. So during crisis, we should examine, we should question our activities, our positions, structures, etc., in order to better plan future for new generations and for ourselves. I hope the answer is enough to eradicate the questions you have. Thank you very much.
Professor, yes, we know that in this crisis, we have learned more about the situation. For example, we don't have to make social relation, or for close distance. And for example, also a government always publish the policy for us, for every person, every single one should be have a long distance if they are in a public facilities or somewhere. And we aware that it's very important, not only for the COVID virus or something, but also we aware that in this era, maybe people think that about technology, about social activity, everything we can do. For example, meeting, for example, virtual meeting like this, we just stay at home, but we not have to go to the public meeting in a hotel or something building, but we can share our what is purpose to meet, like that maybe. Professor Onder, you can hear my voice?
I'm sorry again. I have difficulty to understanding your points, but as I have taken your points correctly, you are saying that local authorities, they are the main and very close, because they are close to the people. They have better opportunities to provide services, as well as social activities. You are, I think, stressing on the importance of social activities, if I am not mistaken. Yes, local authorities, by definition, they are local, close to the people. They have better opportunities, they have better conditions to meet the needs of local societies. There is no question about it.
Okay.
because they are a part of our lives as citizens, as human beings, and we all take goods and services from our nearby organizations. There is no question about it. But during pandemic period, because of the capacities of these local authorities, there are some kind of limitations in the provision of local goods and services. Because, local governments, compared to central ones, central organizations, central governments, they have limited financial, they have limited human, they have limited human and physical resources compared to central governments and regional organizations. Therefore, these kind of limitations, these kind of weaknesses make these organizations, local authorities, local governments, quite limited service provision possibilities. This is the point I wanted to make. So, compared to for the last, for example, 30 or 40 or 50 years, local governments, they have been accumulating more resources, more at least sympathy from local people. But at the moment, because of these crises, governments, they need to overview all the needs of the societies and the countries. I am quite sure that Indonesia, being having so many islands, is a divided country in terms of geographical terms, spread all over the ocean. So it is very, very difficult to provide the goods and services from central government, from Jakarta. I'm aware of that because of the geographical position of Indonesia. But in so many countries, especially Turkey, it's a land, though we have sea in 3 sides of the country, but still it's a compact, and compared to Indonesia, in terms of land, it's a small country. In terms of population, we have 84 million population at the moment. So small again, 1/3 of Indonesia. But my point is that local authorities, at least they should be supported financially, they should be supported technically and physically by central authorities. But again, these issues, they have to be discussed separately. Regarding the social aspects, as I mentioned, we are, Indonesia, Turkey, especially in Islamic countries, we are closely knitted, we are closely related societies. Family relations, for example. Although there are so many warnings, last night I went to visit my parents. Without visiting my parents, my brothers and sisters and relatives and friends, we get used to socialization. So therefore, but again, this pandemic limits our socialization, social dimensions. So, we have to take care of. We have to, listen to the information given by the experts of the field, for example. Therefore, these issues are all challenges. We have to find some kind of answers. We have to some kind of, find a way of dealing with these issues as well as our needs, as well as as human beings. So we have to, strike a quite delicate balance between listening to the experts as well as our social activities. I'm not claiming that we all isolate ourselves and stay away from other people, but we should observe the conditions and the provisions as well as socialization, and as well as mix and mingle with our friends and families. There's no question about it. Okay, thank you very much again.
Okay, very, uh, yeah, how to say, it's beneficial for us, information from you, Professor Onder. And I think maybe we still waiting who participants have questions. Maybe we wait in the chat box several minutes, but for this time we can close for the first invited speaker, and we can move to the next invited speaker. And I see in our room today there is there is Andang Suryana Soma, PhD, the invited speaker from Hasanuddin University, Indonesia. Can I ask Pak Andang?
Okay,
Hello?
please. Yeah, I already in the
Okay,
room now.
can you hear my voice?
Uh-huh.
Can you hear my
Actually,
voice, sir?
Yeah. I'm sorry, also the same with Professor Ordu Kotlu. I can hear clearly.
Oh, I'm so
Yeah.
sorry because in this room we
Yeah.
can hear your voice very clear, but I
Yeah,
don't know what
but
happened
your voice I
if
didn't
you cannot my voice
clearly.
clearly. Maybe
Yeah,
something
maybe the
wrong in the
sound is not
audio
so
system. I
good.
don't know.
Yeah.
Pak Andang,
So yeah.
Pak Andang,
You can hear
hello,
me?
hello. You can hear my
Uh,
voice?
yeah, it's okay.
Okay. For the next session, this is your time, sir, to present your lecture. So, I would like to invite you to give or to provide your lecture today for us, for all the participants. So, time is yours, sir.
Okay, thank you very much. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you for all colleagues. Thank you very much for Prof. Ordu Kutlu. I think your presentation is very good. And maybe I can quote that every crisis don't think about the negative, but think about the positive, and you can get the opportunity. So maybe for my presentation, can you give me for host, or I can present my PowerPoint.
Q co-host now, yeah, and
Yeah,
so you
okay.
can share your
The
presentation slide.
disable participant can sharing that. Okay, I can.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. Okay, thank you very much. It's my pleasure to present my lecture here. My lecture is about the landslide and flood in South Sulawesi. So before that, I want to introduce, I'm Andang Suryana Soma. So I'm from Hasanuddin University, from Forest Faculty. And I have many colleagues also in Andi Jemma. A few years ago, I have a few lectures in Andi Gemma. So nowadays I'm a lecturer in Hasanuddin University as one from forestry faculty and Hasanuddin University 2001, and as a magister in agricultural system with the specialization in forestry in Hasanuddin University in postgraduate in 2004, and I finished my PhD in bioresources and environmental science in Kyushu University, Japan in 2018. So now I already had a laboratory of watershed management in forest faculty Hasan University, and also an expert at P3E in South Sulawesi, Sulawesi Maluku, Ministry of Environmental and Forestry from 2014 until now, expert in accelerating flood and landslide control in South Sulawesi in 2019 until 2020. So in this presentation, maybe I will be show you about the content. So there are 5 lines. So introduction, landslide and flood, research in southern part of South Sulawesi, research in northern part of South Sulawesi, and conclusion. So that's all. If you want to say the introduction before, so landslide and flooding, there are 3 main causes. For example, the first one is the climate change. So we know the climate change is already done in our world. So the change or anomaly to climate, air temperature and rainfall from decades to millions of years, causing a factor by global warming. So forest degradation and greenhouse effect. So you can see day by day the temperature in our city or your city is increasing. And the second is the regional character. So the regional characters in general, the character of the region in South Sulawesi are different in the northern part and the southern part. And the third is about the watershed condition. So if we study about the flood and landslide, we must see the ecosystem of why the flood and landslide happens. So we can see the watershed condition since the 1970s. Watershed degradation have been in the form of forestry and land use. There are many land use changes and several other factors. Of course, it's also about the authority of the government. This degradation process has been continued from a long time until now. So from this, we can see the distributor natural disaster based on Indonesian National Disaster Management Agency. I quote this from 2011 until 2015. So in Indonesia, we can show here there are 5 natural disasters: it's flooding, drought, landslide, earthquake, and forest fire. So from here, we can see the 3 highest events for flooding, landslide, and earthquake. But the higher victim in the natural disaster happened in the landslide. And we see this around Indonesia. So Java is a very high risk of natural disaster, and also in South Sulawesi, yeah, also in Sulawesi, and especially in South Sulawesi. I think we know a few last time ago. So from here, landslide and flooding, we can see what the landslide is an event and increase in the volume of the water to the dry surface. So the water will be flood in the dry surface is the flood. And while the landslide is the movement of a slope forming material in the form of a rock. rubble, soil, and mixed material moving down and out of the slope. Sometimes the flood will be combined between landslide and flooding. According to the adequate global flood analyzer from Water Resources Institute, Indonesia was the 6th ranked country with this an effect of the flooding. It's about 640,000 person per year if effect to the flooding. According to Natural Disaster Mitigation or BNPB, Indonesia is the most frequency disaster in Indonesia with 464 flooding events each year. So it's very high frequency of flooding. The flooding is sometimes accompanied by the landslide are the 6th most frequency disaster in Indonesia with 22 incidents each year. And based on BNPB data track in 2019, and South Sulawesi province have effect by a flood of 46 incident and landslide of 20 events. Like the big flash flooding in Luwu Utara regions. And this the image from 2019 in Makassar. And you can see the landslide in here. This the landslide in Palopo Regency, Palompo City in Batang, and this the landslide happened in Luwu Utara. So this caused the flash flooding in Luwu. Cause of the flood and landslide something, there are two main. So the first is the natural factors. Several natural factors that affect a flood and landslide, such as climate, topography, slope of the area, land cover, soil, and rock condition. And human factor is a series of events caused by the human, either direct or indirect. So in watershed ecosystem, there are three main. The first one is vegetation, soil, and waters. The ecosystem of watershed will be changed because the human life around in this watershed. So if the people in the watershed can manage the ecosystem of watershed, the watershed will give you the good one. So the main factor flood we can see here. I can say there are four. The first one is a land cover, extreme weathers, geology, topography condition of the watershed. So from the land cover is very important in maintaining the hydrology balance of the watershed. So if you want to have a good river discharge, so you can manage the land covers. By maintaining the tree covers, the soil is able to continue to absorb the water, of course. So if the soil without the land cover will be no many water will be infiltrate to the deep waters. So the runoff will be more and more. So we can see in the rainy season we got many waters, and in the dry season we don't have waters. If tree cover is reduced and the hydrology balance of the surrounding environment will also be easily disturbed, the rainwater, the falls will be difficult to absorb by the soil and become more of a flow of water on the surface. So it's the meaning if we thought land cover, so flooding will become. So the second main factor is extreme weathers. Rain will be high density if the over the 100 meter per day, and for a long time often contribute in flooding in Indonesia. So I think we know the typhoon have been hit the province of Nusa Tenggara Timur we can see that is the extreme weather. So I can show you this. It's about the extreme weather. It's a typhoon. So it's the date of April 4. So starting the typhoon in 2 p.m. The 2 p.m.s, and this recording by the Himawari 8. So this the date 5 April hit the Timur Kupang and also Sumba, and 6 April 6, and also hit around the NTB, also down here. So it's a Kupang here. And nowadays it's already go to the India Ocean. This one, the image of India Ocean. So that's why the extreme weather is very main cause in flood and landslide. And the third is geology. So the flooding and landslide are heavily influenced by the geology conditions, especially landslides. The lithology is mostly in the form of mountain Merapi rock and granite, which is very unstable. So that is contribute greatly to the occur of a landslide. After that will be flooding. So we can see the super of the capacity of the land will be effective if the extreme weather is very high. We can see the disaster in Masamba is about the geology. And the last one is the topography condition. Flood and landslides are largely influenced by the topography condition of the area of or the slope of the slope. It's very steep slope is more than 40% in South Sulawesi province will contribute greatly to the occurs flood and landslide. I will be explain in a few research this main cause factor. So it's already this one. Okay. This map I make from the BNPB. So it's a landslide risk map of South Sulawesi. As we can see here, this the class of landslide risk. So in the northern part of South Sulawesi is high risk of landslide. So the high risk of landslide will occur also to the flash flooding. And the southern, you can see here, Makassar is not very risk. And this is the map of the flooding risk in South Sulawesi. This is also based on BNPB flood and risk index data. So you can see here this the class of a flooding risk. The red one is meaning is the high risk, and the yellow one is the medium, and the green is the low. So we already conduct a few research in certain parts of Sulawesi, especially in flooding and landslides. So this is the case study of watershed flooding in 2019. So I conduct with Saiful Rahmat, me and Osman Arsad. So we use the remote sensing data with synthetic aperture radar imagery. So with using the synthetic radar imagery, or something we call it, we name it SAR. So we can see where is the flood area without the cloud. So that we make it the analyze. Where is the area of the flooding? Where is the flooding area in 2019 in Makassar? This one is inundation inundation flooding. So we can see the characteristic of watershed. In the upstream is a small area, in the downstream is the huge area. So it will be effect from the sea also. And And the case study of a landslide in Ujung Loe in 2019. So I conducted with Professor Tetsuya Kubota and also in 2017. So it's Ujung Loe. It's the beside of the General Berang watershed. So we can see it's the landslide also. According to our analysis, using the frequency ratio, slope is very influenced to the landslide with the 5.9, and also with the land use change. Sometimes people say people using the land use is a problem to see how the landslide event. But in our research, we use the land use change. Where it come from the, for example, where it come from the rice field, for example, from the open area to the rice field and from the forest to the rice field will be different effect in stability, slope stability. So we can see here, this the number 1 in open area is number 4 is forest area compared to the open area will very effect to the landslide. So it's the land use change in slope and also in elevation on here. So we from the frequency ratio we use also the make the accuracy of our analysis. So our accuracy of our analysis by using the land use change, we got 0.835, and without land use change is 0. Without land use change, we got 8.3. So with land use change is more better than didn't use the land use change. So this the we make the landslide substability. So this the landslide substability map by using logistic regression with land use change is more better than using the frequency ratio with land use change. So the another research in southern of South Sulawesi, a case study of a landslide in Tangka watershed in 2019. This our research with Asdar Ahmad and Usman Arsad. So we can see also the characteristic of the watershed is different with the Talok before. Here we can see the upstream is more bigger than the downstream. So this will be effect to the flash flooding. So we in 2019 in Tangka River is happened in flashing flooding because there are many landslides in the upstream, and in the landslide in the upstream it will be close the river and make the natural dam. After the natural dam broke, the water will be blow and the flash flooding will happen in here. So we can see also in here is southern parts is an open area is very effect to the landslide in here. And another research is a case study of landslide in Jenelata watershed in 2020. We analyzed about why the flash flooding happened in Makassar in Jeneberang. So from our research, there are 250 landslides occurred in 2019. So why is landslide happen? Because the elevation, because the slope is the main factor also, and also about the extreme weather at the time. And our research in the northern part of South Sulawesi, we conducted two case study of landslide in upstream of watershed Mamasa 2020 is Priska, and also using the frequency ratio. We can see here slope is also dominated the landslide in here. And after that, the lithology, because all the landslide happens in the one lithology. In case study of a landslide and flooding in Balias watershed in two catchment area in Maipi or Kula and Rada. This is the image of a spot image before the flash flooding. So and this is the image after the flash flooding. By our analysis, this one we make using the remote sensing to interpret why the landslide happened in this area. So this the upstream of before the flash flooding in Maipi. We can see there are many landslides happen in the upstream of the Maipi area. And also in Rada, we can see it's more huge than the Maipi area. That's why we can show the flash flooding is more higher in Rada than in Maipi. This is the image from, we can see this image we got from the drone. So it's the landslide in the steep slope. So this the downstream here. We can see the how many flash flooding will affect to the few facility in downstream. And after we digitize the landslide, so there are 401 landslides happening in both two catchment area. In Maipi is 262, and in the Rada River is 139, with area is 70 hectares, and in Maipi is 80 hectares. If we see this image, Maipi is more huge than the Rada. We can see also why the flash flooding is happening in this area, because we can see in the upstream is more huge than the downstream in here. So that's why it's all the landslide will be close to a river and make a natural dam. After that, the natural dam didn't. The natural dam will be broken and the flash flooding happen in this area. So we can see why in Rada is make more effective to the downstream, because we can see this the river is more strikingly than this Maipi. So from our research, we say that the landslide happen is very effective in slope tree, and after that we can see the elevation because the extreme radial will be go to the low temperature, yeah, will go the upstream, and we can see here the lithology only happen in Kambuno granite. So that's why we say the flash flooding in Luwu Utara happened by the landslide at the time. So the conclusion, so by our research, landslides are mainly caused by the factor of rainfall, slope, lithology, rainfall in extreme weathers, slope, lithology, and land use change. In northern part of South Sulawesi, that's occur or landslide is more influenced by the rainfall, lithology, slope, while in the southern part occur of the landslide is more influenced by the rainfall, slope, and land use change. So in the southern part of South Sulawesi is very caused by the land use change. We can saw in Tangka before. And the occur of the flood in South Sulawesi divided in two types flood, namely inundation flood and flash flood. The type of flood can be seen from the characteristic of watershed. So if you want to see what kind of the flooding will be effect in our city, you can see the watershed. What kind of the watershed? If there's sometimes the upstream of the watershed is more huge than the downstream, maybe the flash flooding will be happening in your city, or the upstream is small and downstream will be more bigger, will be inundation, like in Makassar with the Talot River. I think that's all my presentation. Thank you very much. I give you chairman. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, thank you very much. I think that's all. If you have any question, you can discuss. Okay, thank you.
Okay, Pak Andang, thank you very much for the lecture today. I think this is the very interesting lecture because you explained to us what is comparison between South and Northern Sulawesi, especially for a study case in floods and landslides. It's very important for us to know because last year we have big floods in Masamba, North Luwu, and we know that many people say it's because many we say speculations, yeah, issues. They say that it's about the forest. Forest in upstream is open. Yeah, it's because illegal logging, because convert area forest to the agriculture land or something like that. But today you explain to us what is the main factors from natural disaster in Masamba or North Luwu Regency. So it's very important to us. And also, you explained to us that there are two types, landslide and floods. It's different between south and northern part of Sulawesi. In my notice, in southern part, from your study cases, I say that it's almost because in downstream place. But participants, I give 15 minutes